Good afternoon, everyone. I thank you. Those are just unanticipated and uncontrollable circumstances. And we apologize for some technical glitch. And we're back now. Thank you for joining again in our webinar. So as we continue with the lecture of Dr. Borromeo, so we left off from where she has discussed online collaboration tools and offline collaboration. And we continue now with the succeeding lecture for lecture 3 on together with Dr. Barmea.
Hello, I'll continue. So I'll talk about the group monitoring tools. I said earlier that when we are online, there are many available systems that we can use to monitor group work, such as learning management systems and project management systems. We use in UPOU Google Classroom and Moodle. Some and for project management, you can ask your students to try this, like Basecamp, Slack, Asana, and Trello. So this can be used for group work monitoring. Now, the next question is, how do we assess the group work? First, one of the things that the teacher can do is to just check the final output. For example, in CWTS2, we have the final project. We have the project wherein there are reflection papers and the final report of the community service. You can assess, like the teacher can just read or evaluate the final assessment of the final project of the group and give the students one grade. Like all the members of the group will just receive one grade. So that's one way. However, we can also do peer assessment, that we rate our group mates based on their contributions. Peer assessment can be used to enhance the fairness of assessment and encourage students to both participate in and reflect on the group work process. So in the group, we ask the students to rate their group mates. It is imperative for the students to have a complete understanding of the assessment criteria. Yes, this is really very important. Feel comfortable about assessing and also confident that peers are assessing fairly. So this is a matter of communicating to the students, our students, the assessment criteria. So we have to tell them, we have to teach them how to assess each other. This is an example of a peer evaluation form. So there are several criteria like quality of work, quantity of work, initiative, creativity, and leadership, dependability, sharing information, supporting the other team members. And these are the scores that you can give with explanations on each criteria. So you can give numerical scores, numerical equivalent to excellent, satisfactory, or unsatisfactory, and then in the end, compute a grade for a student. We can also ask the students to do self-assessment, and this involves learners in identifying standards and or creating a criteria to apply their work and making judgment about the extent of which they have met the criteria standards. To encourage the learners in self-assessment, it is necessary to build self-assessment and reflective practices explicitly into the course design. So we have to design our course wherein our students will periodically assess themselves, so they will be able to be comfortable in giving themselves self-assessment. Actually, that's just my presentation. I think because we were caught, I will just quickly go through it again. We talked about online collaboration tools, offline online collaboration tools here. These are examples. And offline collaboration tools, is which are more difficult, and offline collaboration is more challenging, but can be done. It can be done. And some group work monitoring tools, and how we assess the group work by output assessment, by peer assessment, and self-assessment. So that's all for my presentation. Thank you very much.
Thank you again, Dr. Bermeo. So again, thank you for coming back to the Zoom as we continue with the webinar. So now we would like to give your questions, and this will be answered by our resource persons. Again, we like to invite Dr. Ria Borromeo and Ana Maria Raimundo to share their knowledge and what they know about well, basically NSTP, the new normal, and the questions that will be raised in this webinar. So can we have the first question?
Yeah, so how can teachers and course administrators make this more holistic and virtual setting? As I mentioned earlier in my presentation, one way that we can look at NSTD is through service learning, which is really looking at the existing skills and interests and advocacies or issues that students already have and incorporating those in their respective NSTP projects.
Thank you. Dr. Barbat, do you have anything to add? Oh, I'm sorry. Yeah. Okay. So sorry, that was the first question. Yeah. Okay. So we go with the second question. How can teachers and course administrators make this NSTP remote learning and teaching holistic in virtual setting? Okay. So I think that has already been addressed. Can we go with the second question, please? Please continue sending your questions. I think we still have time to entertain them. Okay, so for the second question, so what are the options in terms of activities or programs that we can require students to accomplish considering the challenging times? So I think this is pertaining to our new situation and primarily the new normal setting that we have right now. Please.
Yeah, in my presentation, I shared some online volunteering platforms. You can check that out, such as Kindy for volunteering to teach students and Crowd for You. So there are also many other online volunteering opportunities at the moment.
Thank you, Dr. Barmea. Yes, please.
Yeah, so I also mentioned earlier that one thing we can do is through educating a wider audience about different topics that concern us. So, for example, the budget tracker, which, as I've mentioned, can be localized. So, in their respective municipality or in their respective province, they can take on a project like that. Or turning manual on modules, teaching modules into something that can be done online through videos or other instructional materials using some of the software or applications that I mentioned earlier. I think I'd also want to note on that is if the concern, for example, is unstable internet or limited equipment, there are also some projects that can be done using mobile phones and can be used in platforms that are free or more accessible like Facebook or other applications. Thank you.
Thank you. Okay, so I guess that was answered quite substantially by our resource persons. Okay, so we go with the third question. So what are the tools and resources needed to be a successful instructor? So we're talking here about NSCP implementers in remote areas. So any recommendations on how to deal with students with zero or limited access to the internet, which I think was pretty much covered in the discussions or lectures. But yes, please, if that may be answered by our resource persons. Yes, Dr. Bermea?
We can do with printed modules for distributing our lectures to our students, and also for communicating we can rely on the telecommunications networks such as mobile phones or landline and SMS.
Yeah, so on top of that, we can also look at yung mga social media sites, no, that have require less bandwidth than other bigger platforms. So as I've mentioned, I know that these are unconventional tools that we use in in academic setting, but these are also unconventional times. So perhaps we can explore using social media in a more responsible and something that can be applied in the context of education.
Okay, that's right. Yes, thank you very much. All right. So do we still have questions here? All right. Yeah. So next question will be how to inspire the NSTP students to take the subject seriously and become responsible citizens during online classes. I guess the context here will be on the aspect of how students will be more responsible and how they will take online learning or remote learning, something that will be different this time.
So I'd like to answer this, as I mentioned again in my previous presentation, that a key to shifting online is really treating the students as partners. And the part of that is really integrating service learning in the sense that the chosen projects or the chosen topics or thematic areas are topics that students are passionate about or believe in, so that their investment is deeper in the respective projects, but at the same time, something that they can see that's related to what they have to take up in university.
All right. Yes. Thank you. Okay. So next question. I think we still have questions here that our panel or resource persons may share their expertise and knowledge on this. So next question. Okay, so how do we take into account both the implementation of NSTP and the current needs of the society given the crisis? I guess this has been emphasized in most of the questions as well, no? Posted in the Q&A, particularly on how community engagement will now be conducted in the light of some restrictions, no? And quarantine in many areas in the country. Yes, please.
Yeah, so one way that we can look at it, as I mentioned in my slide, for example, take the budget tracker. The data for that is available through official government websites. So we can use that in accessing, we can access those websites and then help translate them into something that can be better understood but by a wider audience. So in that sense, citizen participation or involvement in this current crisis can also be in terms of being a bridge, um, based on what students know from their academic background, and really communicating all of this information to a general public or a general audience who may not be as well versed in certain topics. So in the case of budgeting, it might be in public finance, or it could also be in terms that are important right now, like mental health. So perhaps it can be in the form of background of students who are more familiar with that topic and want to help out other people, as I said, who are not as well versed in these topics.
All right, thank you very much. We still have a few more questions here, and please, we still have enough time, I think, to entertain some of the questions posted. However, when we were cut in Zoom, we lost all your questions, but it has been recorded, and we will make sure that that will be given to our resource persons and returned to you via email or some other means, so that your questions will be answered appropriately. But I'll be reading some of the questions here posted in the Q&A. So from an anonymous attendee. So, and on the use of TikTok, I think this was mentioned earlier, no? By Ms. Anna Bermeo, Ms. Anna Raimundo, I'm sorry. As an alternative platform, I agree that it's a creative way to produce communication materials, okay, but aren't there concerns surrounding the security of the application or the app? I don't think I can confidently suggest my students to use it.
Yeah, so as I've mentioned, this is why it's important to set allowable online platforms. So what I mean by that is if the instructor is not um, either not confident in using it or does not want to use it for one reason or another, it's absolutely up to you. What is important is that we're able to clearly communicate to the students what is allowable and what is not. So essentially, setting the parameters, because the online world is so big and there are so many different sites that can be used, it would be good to identify what you yourself, as the instructor, would be confident and comfortable using. So if TikTok is not it, that's absolutely fine, as long as it's also clear to the students that it is not an option.
Okay, yeah, that's true. Thank you very much. Okay, so other questions here. So regarding the use of platforms or other resources, can you give us tips to avoid plagiarism? I guess this is really something that we all should be very vigilant and critical and be careful on how we address this. So, Dr. Bermeo, would you like to
Yep.
answer that question?
Uh,
Thank you.
there are also online tools that you can use for plagiarism detection. Some are free, some are proprietary. One of the things that we use is called Turnitin. uh, you can try to use that, and so it checks for plagiarism. And there are also other things like Grammarly. Even Grammarly can check for some degree of plagiarism.
All right, that's true. Yeah. Okay, thank you very much. How about this Anna? Do you have any inputs on that?
Yeah, I think especially with plagiarism, because there are so many different platforms that we can use. One way that you can also do with it is the being able to relate it back during their reflection components of the lecture. So one thing that's nice about having the entire program of NSTP that has 1 and 2 is that you're able to see or to gauge whether whatever students put online can be reflected in their respective personal sharings. Kasi ang common dyan is kapag kinopy-paste niyan at pinost nila yan online, odds are baka hindi nila fully talaga in-embody yung sinulat nila. So if you're able to engage with them, let's say in a classroom setup or in your lecture, and you ask them, magma-manifest if this is something that the students really believe in or if this is just something that they ripped off somewhere else. So I think one way really is that interaction personally from the professor and the students.
Okay, thank you. Yeah, that's true. Okay, I think
I
we still
also
have.
tried
Yes,
something
yes, yes,
before. I,
yes.
I tried asking them to write the reflection paper in Filipino or in their native language. So that's
So yeah,
it won't be a guarantee, but yeah, it helps.
that's true. Thank you very much. I think that's also something that we need to emphasize that the use of well, not only English as a medium of instruction, or how students will be able to submit some requirements using whatever language, as long as we can interpret them accordingly and respectfully. So we can encourage that to students, and that will, in a way, show that it's their own original work. All right. So we can go back to the question posted earlier. Yes. And I would like to read the question. I think it has something to do with, yeah, remote learning. Yes, that's right. So how NSTP remote learning and teaching will go about or tackle the barangay immersion activities of the CWTS component. So this has something to do with community engagement again. All right.
Yes. So now, since we are mostly staying within our barangays, there is an opportunity to volunteer in a very close proximity. But we have to take note that, as teachers as well, that the students are willing to do this, and that they are aware of the health risks or the other risks involved in volunteering. We also need to make sure that they have proper waivers, and the health insurance when they embark on community service, when they immerse in their own barangays. But now, since you are just around, like for example, I'm very close to my barangay hall now, it's kind of easier to volunteer, but you just have to be aware of the risks involved.
Exactly.
So you can
Yes.
use this as a project in your CWTS too.
Yes, that's right. Yeah. Thank you, Dr. Bermeo. Um, do we still have other questions? Yes, that's right. LTS 2 module focuses on face-to-face mode of teaching. So do we need to revise this, and how do we include methods for remote teaching? So who would like to take that question?
Yeah.
Yes.
Sorry, go ahead.
No, go ahead.
Sorry. Yeah. So definitely, we have to adjust the modules that are existing. As I mentioned in my presentation, we don't necessarily have to start from scratch. So what we just have to do is to pick up the actual lessons, and then the methodology will change. So one option is perhaps if there are also teachers who are more confident in recording themselves, it would also help so that your students will be able to access it at the time that is convenient to them if internet is an issue. So that's one other way. Another way is that if you have to switch it to remote or switch it to online, Dr. Borromeo pointed out other components of Google that can be accessed. And the great thing about that is that they're really trying to make it more education friendly and student friendly.
Okay, true, exactly. Thank you very much. I think that's, do we still have questions here? I think that's all the time that we can have for the Q&A. Unfortunately, there are other questions that we were able to collect, but rest assured that we will address them and we'll try to find a way on how the resource persons will be able to respond to your questions. Okay, thank you very much. So the link and other resource, online resource materials are also posted in the chat box. So if you would like to look at them, and that will be helpful. And now we develop our modules and learning resources for the NSTP under the new normal. Okay, so just to give a synthesis and go back on what we have learned and practically a quick summary of what we have heard from our resource persons for today's activity. So as mentioned, we look at adapting to remote learning and teaching NSTP, and we try to understand how we can prepare course guides, as mentioned by Dr. Borromeo, our course materials, learning activities, and we have things to consider at that. So we need to look at the content, delivery mode, technologies. So we look at the LMSs and the different ways on how we can be able to maximize learning tools to reach our students, and that will be maximized practically by the NSTP instructors. Learning resources, of course, something that's quite important here will be the assessment and identifying learning activities as well. And well, it looks easy. However, it is quite challenging. And as long as we have guidelines to follow, clear, and something that will practically guide us, no, between our requirements and how the students will be able to satisfy these requirements as well. Online discussions, we're talking about other means and methods such as reflection papers and final exams. Community service plan is also something that we can look into, no? And as mentioned in the Q&A, you know, safety is still our concern, ethical considerations, respect again. Community service track was also mentioned earlier. Online community service opportunities. So these are ideas that we can throw to the NSTP coordinators and implementers on developing partnerships with other online community members. There are also some things mentioned by Dr. Barmeo, Kindi, Crowd for You, quite interesting as we explore new partnerships online. Output is something also that we need to look into, given that under the remote learning and teaching, we have to provide study guides, truly challenging, no? But we can all do this. Content is also an important aspect in the development of our learning materials and the delivery mode, of course. So for lecture 2, Ms. Ana Maria Raimundo shared on ideas on how to restart remote projects and converting face-to-face community engagement in the new normal or in the remote initiatives. So community engagements would always look into and often address converting, well, from the in-person or from the usual face-to-face we had to a remote one. or it could be totally remote, something new, something that we can develop altogether under these new circumstances. And it could even be, in fact, a combination of both. Okay, when we call it blended learning, or something that will practically take what best practices we had in the past and combine it with something new, and we can develop them something that will practically be more useful at this time. So we try to redefine remote engagement by looking at current partners that we have, or even exploring new online partner communities, as mentioned. We try to look at new remote projects. So we try to reimagine community engagement, and that has been a challenge to most of us. We try to learn new things, unlearn things, and try to develop new ways on how we teach NSTP. So integrating public service learning has also been emphasized. Application of theory into practice, and combination of synchronous and asynchronous activities that may be identified as we develop our learning materials for NSTP. Of course, choosing a project where students will deeply care for, or something that they are really passionate about. Okay, and this will practically be a new way, to look at how students will be more engaged and be more responsible in the ways that we'll be able to learn and provide a meaningful engagement with NSTP. Examples of potential remote projects and topics were also mentioned. Setting parameters, looking at allowable online platforms. The question of how do we assess students. Earlier, there was also a question about plagiarism, originality, and addressing these together with technology and identifying skills and abilities that students can contribute. So at the end, we try to articulate desired outcomes and discover ways on how to do new things under the new normal. On lecture 3, the last lecture that we had, and thankfully we were able to come back live in Zoom after we were cut off. Online collaboration tools was again discussed by Dr. Barbat. We were talking about Google Drive, Google Docs, Overleaf, Dropbox, Zoom, etc. Offline collaboration is a bit challenging, but of course it can be done. It is something that we have to face under the new normal. Group work monitoring and group work assessment. So I think we all would like to have, everyone participate, be responsible, collaborate. We become co-creators of new learnings here as we develop, the new environment, okay, of how we teach NSTP under the new normal. Okay, so with that, I think we're on schedule, okay. We would like to thank everyone who are with us here in this webinar. Of course, we look forward to this coming school year as we continue with the national service under the new normal. Okay, so we extend, of course, our appreciation to our resource speakers, Dr. Barbat, and of course, Ms. Raimundo, for sharing their knowledge on how we can continue with teaching and learning NSTP as we face a new challenge and a different dimension of community engagement, service, and volunteerism. So UP, as a national university, is committed to help our constituents, faculty and students, and other SUCs and HEIs as we bring new ways to teach NSTP under the new normal. So we partner with everyone. Please let us know how we can help each other, how we can help you develop materials for NSTP. We hope that with this webinar, we can all move forward and towards the direction of teaching NSTP remotely and in a manner similarly effective as before. So our challenge to be creative, be innovative, collaboration, partnerships, as we continue to inculcate the true essence of service to the community and the nation. So on behalf of UP Diliman NSTP office, together with our director, Janelle Labor, our team, of course, Chancellor Nemenso, Vice Chancellor Tess Payong Ayong, we would like to thank everyone. Thank you very much and have a great weekend ahead.